Bitcoin has just today and yesterday hit 2 times a new all-time high, and that's amazing to see. We've had the previous all-time high around $124,000. Let's quickly show you guys where we had the previous all-time high. It was around here in middle of August, beginning of August of last month, and we've obviously hit around 124,000. But now, yesterday we just cracked 125,000, and then today we're right now hovering around the new all-time high, around about 126,000, almost 126,000 for Bitcoin. And it exactly goes as our prediction goes. We're gonna now rally in October. October is ultra bullish for Bitcoin usually, and we're gonna continue rallying for October and hopefully in November potentially as well, before we then go into a bear market. I have some updates on my positions. For example, for BNB, for Binance, I've sold it all because we hit our price target, and I will show you guys that quickly now. Obviously, I've mentioned the price target for BNB at around 1,250, and the way we calculated this price target is in this way. We've had here a inverse head and shoulders pattern, and we just take the length from the bottom to the top, to the baseline, we duplicate it, and we create a price target of around the current price, 1,250. Now, of course, the price might go higher, but in my opinion, it's a good time to take profits. Definitely do not wait too long for taking profits. And yes, I think if Bitcoin and Ethereum continues rallying, which I think will happen, of course the price will go higher. But like I said, no one ever goes broke taking profits, so it's always good to take some profits along the way. And let's quickly go back into Bitcoin. So where's the next price target for Bitcoin? Well, it's actually pretty much at the current price. So we've drawn this pattern here, and for Bitcoin itself, we had this W pattern forming, right? We had like a W pattern forming, and it's, again, we take the baseline, we duplicate this line and put it on the top. And the price target is around about the current price, around 126,000. So I think this is obviously a good point to take some profits along the way. And I would not be surprised if we then go again down to potentially the CME gap, which we actually formed last weekend. And I want to show you the CME gap now before I go back into Bitcoin. So the CME gaps are formed over the weekend if we have a lot of price movement happening over the weekend, and these gaps in prices tend to be filled rather sooner than later. We've had a CME gap here again around when we had the all-time high form previously, and that was in August, 11th of August, and we've gone up and then filled the CME gap in the couple days following this. But right now we have a CME gap all the way down here at about $111,000 per Bitcoin. It's quite a way to go. It's 14% below the current price, but of course nothing always goes up. And you can see actually here, look guys, we have another CME gap right here, and this CME gap was also filled not too long after. It was filled a couple days after, about 2 weeks after. And I would not be surprised if we go down again here to fill that CME gap now that we've hit a new all-time high. Fill this gap here, and before we then go higher to a price target, in my opinion, between 130 to 140,000 dollars per Bitcoin, where I think Bitcoin will top out. And let's quickly calculate where's actually our target for Bitcoin next, right? The way we can do this is we draw a Fibonacci extension line, and we'll take it from the top here to the bottom. And this shows us that let me draw it a bit to the right. And this shows us that we have a target here at the bottom. So we have a target of around at the 1.618 level right here. And this target brings us all the way to $131,000 per Bitcoin. And that is the next price target, in my opinion, for Bitcoin, before the next target is then around $145,000. And I think somewhere in between here, between 131 and 145, Bitcoin will reach a top this cycle before we then go down. And another thing to note, what's my strategy, right? How do I know if we're in a bull market or in a bear market? And how do I know when the bear market actually starts? And the way to do this is to look at these lines. This is the bull and bear market support bands. And we have had an amazing bounce from here. You can see we've very clearly bounced above, and this reconfirms again that we are still in a bull market. According to our theory also, we're going to be in a bull market for about another month. And if we go back in time, we can always see that this is pretty much always the case. I mean, here, of course, we went down and there was a time for caution. But usually, as long as we are fairly above this line, above the bull and bear market support bands, we can say that we're in a bull market. And if we go here to the weekly, we can see that in the last cycle, the moment we went below with confirmation, below the bull and bear market support bands, we have entered a bear market, right? And then this was going on for a couple of months. And now already since about February of 2023, so over 2 years now, we've been in a bull market. And it's again about time for us to potentially then break into a bear market. These lines will most likely start converging. Once the lines converge and Bitcoin breaks down, the price breaks down below the bull market support bands, I think we're gonna go into a bear market. Now, I've shown this to you guys a few times before, but this is an indicator for when the cycle will end. And it's all usually at the end of these green lines. I've said it already many times, and I'm very strongly convinced that this theory will hold also this time. Here you can see at the end of the green lines is about the end of October, beginning of November. So we have about 1 month to go before I think we're going to go into a bear market. And look at last cycle. The moment we reach the end of the green lines, which is about 80 weeks after the halving, here, just so you can see I'm not making things up, it's about 80 weeks after the halving, is when we enter a bear market. And the same can be said the cycle before. It's actually not on the chart here, but it's usually always the case that we should take profits up to about 80 weeks after the halving. And then best thing to do is don't touch or don't buy Bitcoin for trading purposes until we are about 135 weeks after the halving. Here you can see where my cursor is, 135 weeks, which means 135 weeks after the halving of 2024, of April 2024, which is probably around here, we should be entering a new position again for the next cycle and start buying some Bitcoin. So most likely around end of 2026 is when, again, or beginning of 2027 is then I think a good time to start buying Bitcoin again. And if I quickly show you guys Ethereum, actually, on Ethereum, what has happened? Well, we've been trading in this sideways moving pattern here. And now we've actually confirmed the breakout, which is seen by us bouncing. So we can see that we've bounced from here, we've bounced higher. And the next price target is gonna be at the 1.618 level at around $5,700 per Ethereum, which is, I think, a good time to take partial profits. And then again at this level around $6,800 per Ethereum, which is then another good point in my opinion to take some profits. So we're just going to be waiting now. We just have to play the long game and wait and see what's going to happen with Bitcoin, Ethereum, take profits along the way. That's very important to note. And this way, I think not much can go wrong and we should be making profits. And if you look at the monthly returns here for Bitcoin, we're already at almost 10%. And if you take the average monthly return for October for Bitcoin, it's pretty much 21%. So we still have a way to go higher. And then again, November is also extremely bullish. Look at November, it's 46% on average, the return for Bitcoin. So the next 1 to 2 months, in my opinion, are going to be very good for Bitcoin. We're hopefully going to have more mainstream attention coming into Bitcoin because we know that there's not much interest in Bitcoin mainstream right now. If you look at the Google trends, and as the mainstream comes in and more money flows into Bitcoin, prices are going to go higher before eventually we are going to go into a bear market. I just have to say it how it is. And with that being said, that's the plan for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to repeat the same thing to you guys every day because that's as simple as it is. That's the strategy. Of course, I strongly urge you to buy Bitcoin on a long-term basis. And I've got my little Bitcoin here. I've bought myself a little physical Bitcoin just as a reminder to always buy more Bitcoin because that's the future of money in my opinion. And with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe. See you guys next time. Bye.